Time now to dig deeper into some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have former Utah GOP Chair Derek Brown and State Representative Jen Daly-Provo. Great to have both of you on the show. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be here.
Let's start off with Tucker Carlson, the Fox News pundit, taking aim at both Governor Cox and Senator Romney. Now, this is a little older and some new developments happened that we'll get into. But first, Derek, let's start with your thoughts as a former Utah GOP chair of Carlson coming at these two Utah elected leaders, calling them liberal leaders. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, when you go on a show like that, you got to know what you're getting into. And I think the Chairman Jorgensen did a good job of not taking the bait. I mean, if you watched it, you could see he kept throwing him red meat, and he didn't take the bait. But the reality is for him to refer to, Governor Cox as a wild-eyed liberal just is not the case. I mean, this is a guy who has a consistent record on so many issues of being conservative, everything from abortion to attacking the Biden administration on public lands issues, to Second Amendment issues, to government regulations, lower taxes. I mean, this is a conservative governor. And so to sort of pick one issue, kind of cherry pick an issue and say because of this, he's a far left-leaning liberal, it simply isn't the case. And so I think my response is to give grace to both parties and know that Chairman Jorgensen's got a really difficult job to do. And I just think that the characterization of the governor that way simply isn't the case.
I will add this to what you said as well, Derek. Any Republican who didn't know where Governor Cox stands on LGBTQ issues wasn't paying attention before he was elected, because he's been very front and center about that. Jen, as a local elected Democrat, your thoughts when you heard the governor and Senator Romney referred to as liberal leaders?
Well, as a liberal who represents downtown Salt Lake City, I would agree with Derek that the governor is not a liberal. I think that he is very solid and devoted to his conservative values and his conservative credibility. But that said, I'm happy to say, and I always do say when I'm given the opportunity, that doesn't mean that we can't find agreement on issues regardless of where we are on which side of the aisle. And that is one area that in my experience in working with Governor Cox and with the Lieutenant Governor, that we've been able to find common ground. And even when we don't, the dialogue is civil. And I think that when we lose sight of those opportunities to carefully work through issues, to have good discussions about issues, that instead of focusing on what we need to do, and that's solving hard problems, too many people, like in this interview with Tucker Carlson, devolve into throwing red meat and lose track of the fact that we've got a lot of big problems to solve and a lot of issues that face Utah that we need to work on, and not get into this nasty name calling that does nothing more than perpetuate this this malicious discourse that we've found ourselves in the last couple of years.
I want to have a follow-up for you on that very issue, but first with you, Derek. Chairman Jorgensen did give some credibility in saying that the woke ideology may be causing some buyer's remorse. How prevalent is that thought or feeling within the Republican Party, and why are people believing that?
Well, I think the reference to woke ideology is more of a left of center kind of attack, which is something that I think the chairman of the Republican Party, you would expect him to talk about that. I mean, the problem that he has is, as someone who's sort of carried that mantle in the past, I feel like there's about 5 major political parties in Utah, and Chairman Jorgensen's chairman of about 4 of them. And so he's got, the reality is he has what I believe is the most difficult job in Utah politics, of trying to navigate that, that minefield. And so I think he's exactly right on for expressing concerns with woke ideology. Although I think sort of applying that to Governor Cox is I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense.
Jen, do you see any woke ideology in the state of Utah that people need to be concerned about?
No, I think that the term woke ideology is a bit of a trope. And again, if we could look at the chairman for the Republican Party to take a stance on sitting down and solving some hard problems instead of buying into this nasty rhetoric and make it all about sound bites and nasty talking points and attacking politicians, public servants who really are just trying to do the very best that they can and have records of adhering to the political and philosophical ideologies that they have stayed consistent with throughout their political careers. And I think, it's red meat, and it doesn't get to the substance, and it doesn't solve any problems.
All right, I want to move on to state conventions coming up this Saturday. Some really fascinating storylines playing out in both sides, both conventions. Derek, let's start with you. What are some of the big stories you are watching as we head into the state convention?
Well, I think one of the interesting things this year is that as much as I like the convention and caucus process, it's only as good as the participation level. And I think we've seen a pretty low level of participation this year for a number of reasons. And I think that's created an interesting dynamic in a lot of races. You've seen a state House representative, Steve Handy, up in Davis County, who effectively lost his seat at that convention. And I think a lot of the candidates are watching that. I mean, let's be honest, there's someone in Utah County who has criminal charges that have been filed against him, and he got enough votes last Saturday in Utah County to go to a primary against one of the most arguably and reliably conservative senators in the state of Utah. And so I think you're seeing a lot of elected officials who are up for re-election looking at that dynamic and saying, I wonder what this is going to look like come state convention time.
Yeah, and we've kind of seen it play out a little differently in, say, Salt Lake County and Davis County, so we'll see what happens at the state convention. Representative, what are the big storylines you're watching on the Democratic side?
So the big story, of course, is the Senate race against Mike Lee and having an unaffiliated candidate in Evan McMullen versus the Democratic candidate, Cale Weston, and some of the conversations about supporting or not supporting a Democratic candidate at convention with the hopes of finding a candidate who can feasibly unseat Mike Lee in the Senate race. So that's taking up a lot of the time and attention of most of the people in the Democratic Party right now, I think.
So much to dig into there. Derek, one thing I wanted to get your take on was the race in the 3rd Congressional District. Are you surprised that Representative Curtis did not gather signatures when you talk about this very unknown factor that's playing out this year?
A little bit surprised, but he didn't do it the last cycle. And I remember talking to him, and he said, look, I am convinced that the delegates know me, they know where I stand, and I'm comfortable with that. And when I talked to him this year about it as well, he said, no, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with my voting record. They know who I am, and I'm comfortable that I can get through the convention. So I think that's going to be the case. I think ultimately...
Could this year play out differently than, say, 2020 did, though?
I really don't think so. I think you've got a lot of challenges. You're seeing a lot of people step up and challenge a lot of incumbents. And it creates for some interesting dynamics. But I think when push comes to shove, I think we're going to see all the incumbents keep their seats, at least at the congressional level, including Senator Lee. And I think that they'll have to work a little harder to maintain those seats. But I think when... at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to see much of a difference in terms of what the faces are in terms of those representing us in Congress.
Representative, back to your point on the Senate race. What does it say about the party and what may be an inability to connect with voters on a statewide level when you have to go back to the 90s to be competitive in a seat? What does this say, this little movement to get behind an independent and abandon a Democratic candidate say overall about the party?
Well, I would say that it reinforces what we know about Utah, that it is a conservative state. And I have the opportunity to represent a district in downtown Salt Lake City that I love, that has a overall political philosophy that deviates from the overall state. But I am also very respectful and appreciate that voters in other districts have the opportunity to vote for somebody who represents their political philosophy and ideology. But we have to, as Democrats, as a superminority in the legislature, and as minority voters in the state of Utah, we have to be respectful and thoughtful about the fact that everybody's voice matters. And if the majority of voters are conservative voters, then we need to have a very real conversation about candidates that instead reflect just one far right side of the state's philosophies and views and look at opportunities to find where there are more areas where we can strike common ground and alliance, and someday hopefully have representation in Washington, D.C. that's more reflective of the state of the whole instead of just the far right.
Okay, Derek, I have about 20 seconds left. I want to get your thoughts. You used to work for Senator Lee, he's your former boss, of this coalition that's forming in the Democratic Party to back the independent Evan McMullin.
Well, I thought it was interesting that last time around, the last election, the Democrats encouraged people to leave their party to vote in the primary, and this time they're basically encouraging them to leave their party at the general and vote for a candidate that isn't even part of their party. In fact, a candidate who is, frankly, pro-life and pro-Second Amendment. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic, and I think it's a kind of a cute gambit. I don't think it's going to pay off in the end, but it does say something, I think, about the state of our political parties here in Utah.
All right, I wish we could dig deeper into that, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Really appreciate both of your insight. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks, Bud.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics.